Welcome back to the channel. Volkswagen Group are one of the established car makers, really putting effort into the EV revolution. Much of their future is dependent on the success of the models coming out that are based on the MEB platform. Although the ID.4 may hit the bigger volumes and the Audi Q4 e-tron may hit the luxury market, there is another contender that sits right in between the two and maybe the more compelling option. Let me introduce you to the Skoda Enyaq IV. Hello and welcome. My name is Martin Lee. Don't forget we have an Instagram channel now. We are at best_electric vehicle. We'd love to connect with you on there. Check out our channel. Meanwhile, if you like what we do here on YouTube, hit subscribe and the bell icon so you never miss a show. Let's start off from the ground up. Of course, we are talking about the current electric platform from the Volkswagen Group. Now, it will be superseded in time, but right now they're building cars on the MEB platform, and that is what the Skoda Enyaq is built on. For a lot of you watching, you know exactly what that means, but for others, newcomers, it'll be new. Let me explain. The MEB platform is a modular platform for electric cars only, produced by Volkswagen Group. They plan to use this for various models, with many more to be released over the coming years. It's being employed in sister cars like the VW ID.4, Audi Q4 e-tron, the smaller ID.3, the Cupra Born, etc. This allows VW to build ground-up EVs at scale, on a platform that can be easily transferred across brands and models, from small cars to large SUVs. The platform sits the battery pack down low, in the center of the car. The wheels are pushed out to the corners, and it resembles a skateboard in many ways if you just strip it back to the wheels and the battery. The great benefit to the customer is that we can get a cheaper car with more internal space and functionality than a car that was simply adapted from a combustion counterpart. So what about design and styling of the Enyaq IV? Well, you can definitely see some styling cues shared with its more premium Audi Q4 e-tron, maybe less so the softer ID.4. This has lots of sharp lines, angular, that are creases on the bonnet and down the side profile of the SUV. Despite being a ground-up EV, Skoda have employed the design language of the brand and installed a closed-off grille up at the front. What do you think of the looks? We'd love to hear from you. Do you like the more friendly, some would say rounded, shape of the VW ID.4, or perhaps the more aggressive styling of the Enyaq IV? Tell us in the comments below. As you move around towards the rear, we can see that Skoda has gone for space inside. The roofline remains higher and takes a boxier form than many other SUVs. What is a quite large and imposing rear is broken down by a series of lines, almost shelf-like. The spoiler at the roof just under the rear window and just below the boot, the trunk opening. Inside, the styling will have a lot to do with how you spec it, but those that like their Skodas will find comfort in its design. The umbrella built into a recess in the door is a really nice touch to what is a functional interior. Ambient lighting gives a bit of extra pizzazz. A 13-inch landscape screen dominates the dash and gives easy access to a whole host of functions and information. It includes Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. A vehicle like the Enyaq IV has to be functional as well as looking good. Some of the appeal of the brand is the quality you get for the price, on top of the functionality and space. Just look at the likes of the Superb or the Kodiaq that have done so well for them traditionally. Well, the Enyaq IV has plenty of space indeed, although the SUV shape is just under 4.7 meters long. Some would even call it more of a crossover shape, not a traditional SUV. It has a very impressive load of 585 liters of space in the back. Fold the seats down, that will expand to 1,710 liters. That's one of the benefits of a dedicated EV platform like this. Unfortunately, there's no frunk available, even if you only take the rear-wheel drive option. Now, it would have been nice to get maybe 40 or 50 liters up front. If nothing else, it's somewhere to store your charging cables or a smelly takeaway as you're driving home. But in all seriousness, the VW brand don't seem to want to put frunks in their cars, but we keep our charging cables under the boot floor. but unfortunately we also have a lot of kids stuff as well, and so that means when we want to use a charger that isn't a tethered cable, we are inevitably unpacking the car to get to the cable. Come on VW, just put a small space to store our cables up the front. You know there's room. We know that you're not exactly buying an SUV for track days these days, but what about performance? Well, it's hard to look at this and not compare it to a Tesla Model Y performance. That's really thrown down the gauntlet, but at least here in the UK, that's on sale for £65,000, which is significantly more than the Enyaq iV. So maybe it's unfair to compare these two cars. The Enyaq's performance will obviously change depending on which battery, which powertrain you opt for, but if you indulge yourselves, talk about the RS version, which is upcoming, the sporty one, if you like, you get all-wheel drive, 225 kilowatts of power, 302 horsepower. What does it mean in terms of speed? Well, they cap the top speed at 112 miles an hour, 0 to 62 miles per hour, or 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 6.2 seconds. So, it's fast, but not mind-bendingly fast. But then again, we're talking about quite a big SUV shape here that's going to be dropping the kids at school or heading to a theme park at the weekend. How fast do you need to go? Now on to the nitty-gritty, the stuff that I love. Some would say the nerdy stuff. All right, I'll take it. Batteries, range, and charging. What does the Enyaq iV have stuffed away underneath the floor? Let's find out. Once again, there's options. At the lower end, you can save some money, get a smaller battery, and of course save weight, 55 kilowatt hours, 52 of which is usable. In terms of range, that'll get you about 210 miles, 340 kilometers. But if you're worried that's not going to get you far enough, then you can go for the rear-wheel drive 77 kilowatt hour version. That's usable, by the way. That gets you 320 miles, 510 kilometers, which is pretty good. But of course, range is dependent on conditions. If you drive around town in mild weather, you'll be hitting 400 miles. Take it on the motorway, at speed, in winter, add luggage, maybe a roof box and some elevation. The range is gonna drop. And maybe if you're lucky, you'll get 200. Hey, look, that's not just this car, that's all EVs. But still, that's like 3 hours of motorway driving. That's surely enough. As for charging, the Enyaq iV equips itself well, but with a warning, and we'll get onto that in a moment. On a Type 2 AC charger, the Enyaq iV will take 11 kilowatts. That's pretty decent, a good onboard charger to have, but then again, only if you can find a 3-phase supply. If you're at home, your home charger probably maxes out maybe around 7 kilowatts, maybe a bit more, a bit less. So for the bigger battery, that's about 10 hours of charging overnight. On DC fast charging, the Enyaq iV will peak at 125 kilowatts. That's pretty good. As I've said before, it's all about the charging curve. No point having a headline rate that it'll hit for a second and then drop down to snail speed. And the Enyaq fares pretty well there. It's all based on the same platform. We know what we're looking at here. If you can find a nice fast charger, about 300 kilometers of range added in about half an hour. But we're on to the warning now, because the Enyaq iV doesn't necessarily come with 125 kilowatt charging as standard. You do have to option it on some models, and the smaller battery is limited to 100 kilowatts of charge speed anyway. And unfortunately, not everyone will be aware of the value of upgrading from 50 kilowatt DC fast charging. Now, I'm not particularly impressed by that decision. I understand putting it on the options list to save some money and to give the option to those people who are only ever going to charge at 50 kilowatts the chance to maybe cut down on the cost of the car. But really, if the car is able to charge at a certain speed, I believe that all car makers should give it the ability to charge at that speed. So let us know in the comments below what you think of this car. I love to hear from you. And people watch this channel from all over the world, so get your opinion in below. Let's keep the conversation going. Could you get this car where you live? And if it is available, is it an option for you? What about the competition? Would you prefer a Tesla ID4, a Q4 e-tron, or maybe something else? Let us know. Thanks for watching today. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up icon. It tells us to make more like it, and we'll see you on the next one.